So, hi, welcome to Lean's Corner. And today we are kicking off an episode about breaking the pattern. Like you said that you want to talk something about that make students and children do the boring things, repetitive habits. Yeah, so join us in episode today. We welcome a special guest, Emily, and could you please introduce a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Toronto, and I'm on a mission to inspire people on living their life to the fullest while bringing you guys on the journey on how I'm doing that as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so for now, we are moving on to the first session, the pattern, kids doing the same boring thing. So, when you look at young people today, what repetitive habits or behaviors do you notice the most?
So when I look at young people today, like let's say teens aged 12 to 19, I see being on your phone way too much as the most repetitive habit. I think that maybe 95% of teens are on social media, and it's become a constant way that they fill their days when they're brushing their teeth to when they're eating their food. Social media is just something that's like constantly consuming them.
Yeah, so you mean that the digital habits is the most important issue right now? Yeah. That's true. I agree with you at that point. And so the second question is what makes the repetition dangerous for creativity and personal identity in young children?
So, going off of what I said in the previous answer, I feel like this becomes a really big issue when it destroys the process of teens' creativity and building onto their own ideas. I think that social media should be something that inspires people to do their passions and to follow their own dreams and not just fill some void of looking at other people's dreams. So, I think it's great for the teens who are viewing it for positive content like nature or inspiration, but when it's just living someone else's life and it's often filtered, then it's really toxic.
Yeah, that's true. And so for now, we move on to the second part, the breaking point, the moment you realize you needed something to change. So, what was the moment you realized that I'm living like everyone else and it doesn't feel all right?
So I think this is a very good question. I love answering. So in February of this year, I was kind of obsessed with Snapchat. I noticed that every day for the past 2 or 3 years, when I wake up, I'd go on Snapchat. When I would eat my food, I'd go on Snapchat. And I noticed that I stopped feeling like myself. I wasn't as bubbly, I wasn't as happy, and I really stopped talking to people in person because I was more focused on, oh, what's happening on my phone right now. And honestly, after doing some journaling and reflecting on it, I felt like I lowered my self-worth and I wasn't really living to my fullest potential. And I thought the only way I can delete it or the only way I can fully get rid of that habit is to just get off that app completely. I wasn't going to set any time limits because we all know we can just press, oh, add 5 minutes, add 15 minutes, and something like that. So I broke the loop for myself so that I could try to reach my full potential and have more time on my hands. And since then, I feel like I really have. Instead, I was learning about real world issues and doing things I love, like advocating and doing public speaking. So I think that it was really beneficial because, like, focusing on the thing that's making you kind of like a less better version of yourself and determining exactly what that is the first step to being able to stop it.
Wow, that's really intriguing. So it's mean like nowadays we are on immersed ourselves in the social media platforms very much time. Yeah. And another question is, who or what gave you the push to step out of the pattern?
So I go to a Catholic school, and in the beginning of February, they were celebrating Lent, a time where people of the Christian religion, they choose something and they kind of eliminate that from their lives, something that they do that's bad. For example, they stop eating sweets for a month, or they stop maybe cursing for a month. And me, I don't really come from a religious household, but being around these people who want to better themselves, I feel like helped me better myself too. Because I was really intrigued by the idea of trying to challenge yourself and trying to put yourself out of your comfort zone to better yourself in a way. So I decided to observe that kind of time of fasting, but I chose to fast off of social media for a little bit. And I definitely noticed the advantages and disadvantages because I feel like the best way to do that is to kind of step back a little and you can realize it more.
Yeah, that's really interesting point about that issue. So another question is like many young people nowadays they feel like their voice is too small. What would you say to them? What advice would you give to them so that they can have a chance to raise their voice about some issues that are happening around the world?
I understand 100% when some people might think their voice is too small, but I think it gets to a certain point where you have to be the one to tell yourself, no, my voice isn't too small. And that first step can truly change everything because progress in your career or in your social life is all going to come down to what you're telling yourself. Because the words that you say, that becomes the house that you live in. So you should choose those words wisely and tell yourself positive affirmations like, I can do this. I can be, my voice can be loud, my voice can be important, I'm important, and these things will start to really kind of positively affect you. And also just try finding spaces in your community that will give you a place to do so, like nonprofit organizations or podcasts like today. And so practicing that skill can just get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's a useful advice. So you mean that we have to be confident about ourselves, like and practicing many times to get better. So
Exactly.
for now, yeah, that's true. And for now, we are moving on to the another section, like part three, youth homelessness. Like you said that you are the founder of a youth homelessness campaign. So I am curious about the story behind your project. Youth homelessness, what does this concept mean to you personally?
So, as a Canadian born and raised in Toronto, I have immigrant parents who have like a less fortunate country experience. So, already from the start, I'm so grateful for everything I have and all the opportunities I have, the freedom, everything, the material things, of course. But that being said, this summer I spent more time downtown in my city. I noticed a really big issue. There's so many kids in the streets without basic needs or necessities to their day-to-day lives. And I felt like I had to take it upon myself to try to make that first step in making the change, to get people talking about it, to make donations about it. Because as someone who this is like my normal life living with these necessities. It's kind of like a basic thing for me. Unfortunately, those basic needs aren't really met by everybody. So I think that there is nobody better to advocate about this than myself because I kind of get to see like two sides of things with my own perspective, but also with my own experiences. So that's why homelessness particularly stuck out to me, as well as clothing drives and encouraging people to donate their gently used clothing also helps with like the economical state of the world, which is something that I'm also really interested in, keeping the planet clean while also making your actions on the planet really worthwhile for the people that are here.
Yeah, that's such an amazing and meaningful project. So you said that your project is also uh is calling for sponsorship, right? Of raising fund. So I have an extra question like in case of the sponsor, they feel they don't believe in your project that your project can make the real impact to the whole community. So how do you convince them to raise money and to sponsor your project for helping the needy people?
Yeah, so I feel like this question was a big one for me in my process. This project took me about 3 to 4 months, but mostly in whole 2 months, I was just emailing and emailing and emailing. And I think that honestly, getting what you want, a big part of that is consistency. You have to put yourself out there, but you also have to do convincing. Like you said, I was trying to find different ways where I could kind of like tell the companies what I'm about, but also what I'm trying to do in the future because no progress is going to be overnight, right? And their support is exactly what I needed. And 100%, I had some rejections. I had some confused people. I was even confused sometimes, but it was that consistency that had me practicing, but also got me where I wanted to be. And I ended up getting sponsored by Covenant House, which is a charity that's doing exactly kind of like what I want to do as well. So it was really good to do that. And kind of like I said before, research about what's in your community already. You don't have to go somewhere further because there are things that probably do exist.
Yeah, that's such a powerful. So it means like you have a strong passion for your project to help the other people. Okay, so what is the biggest achievement in your project that you feel like unforgettable moment?
Hmm. Unforgettable moment. I think that so far, the most unforgettable moment was our first charity event. This was at a school that was at in my area. And this was something that was really impactful because so far my campaign has been an awareness campaign on social media. So actually putting it to life, it involved so much planning, getting a lot of supplies, getting the word out as much as we possibly could, but it really made it all the worth when we gathered over $200 of donations and many, many bags of clothes. But that like in-person factor made me realize that the change really does just start from within yourself. And if you work towards something, it can be happening in real life too, not just something that you see when you're scrolling.
Yeah, that's a good one. And okay, so for now we are turning to another session, making difference, how to step out and do something new. So another question for you, like how can someone maintain curiosity and the courage to be different in a restructured environment?
I think that you really have to know yourself before you can let other people know yourself. Something that really helped me get out of my comfort zone, my restricted kind of like everyday life, was journaling and was getting to know what my interests are. Because sometimes with all the talk of social media and everyday life, you kind of do forget like what your key fundamentals are. So it's important to be centered, to know yourself and to work on yourself too, because I'm a strong believer that if nothing changes, nothing changes. Of course, I wish I could wake up and have all my goals accomplished and all these hobbies acquired, but that's unfortunately not the case. So it all does start from you. It's kind of like a positive thing, but it's definitely a hard thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so, if a young person feels like they are losing their inner child, inner youth, where can they start rebuilding it again?
I think that they can start rebuilding it again, kind of like I said, by going back to like their hobbies or even learning new hobbies. You'd be surprised how much you can learn about yourself in these situations that you wouldn't typically be in. So if you're more of like an artsy person, try signing up for a volleyball class or even go on a run because testing ourselves and our capacity, both physically and mentally, can really bring you back to your core, who you truly are. And I hear people all the time saying, "Oh, I wish I could be a kid again. I wish I could be a kid again." But of course, there's that comfort of childhood, but there's also such like a nice, rewarding feeling of being the age that you are now because you're the oldest you've ever been, but you're also the youngest that you're going to be, moving forward. So take that with like the biggest gratefulness and take the moment in hand as like a new one. I think people hold on to bad things that happened in the past, but that's just a way of procrastinating your fullest potential. So if you just keep growing, you're gonna feel like more like yourself than ever. So those new situations and new environments are definitely a big one for me.
Yeah, that's such an intriguing perspective. So you said that you are also being a test speaker, right? Yeah. So when you start doing like as a TED speaker, what is the biggest difficulty that you have tried yourself to overcome?
So I think that speaking has always been something that kind of came naturally to me, and it's also something that I had a passion for ever since I was little, since I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. That's like my main thing I wanted to do. And it was really exciting and easy at first. But when I realized that, there would be so many people watching me, the typical things people say, the advice people give, like, oh, imagine nobody's there, imagine you're just alone speaking, didn't really work for me. But it was kind of like when I went within myself and realize that kind of speaking is something I'm doing for myself, but also for the person that maybe wants to be heard in the audience but doesn't have the courage to speak up, really made me realize that it doesn't really matter if I'm embarrassed or someone might think something silly of me, because at the end of the day, the purpose is what I'm trying to kind of like achieve here and not looking like I know everything, because nobody knows everything, right? So if speaking is something that you're interested in, and anyone's interested in, I think they should go for it. Right now, for my school's TEDx club, I'm writing a speech, but I'm still kind of going between ideas because I want to find something I'm really passionate about. I think the key thing is to speak what you know and not speak something that you have no idea about, right?
Yeah, that's such an amazing opportunity. Yeah, so for now, we are moving on to the final session, like giving advice and support youngsters. So, if you could reimagine how young people learn to think differently, far beyond just the usual routines, what approach would you introduce to help them escape the boring loop?
I think to escape the boring look, we need to go and be a little more creative than we've been. I think that we should all take it upon ourselves to start a project, small or big, within this new year to help redefine what a younger person or a youth really is. Because after all, we are the future change makers and leaders. And I think that being zoomed into our phones are only going to make us kind of like sheep in a way, following the trends, following what everyone else is saying, that because that could be toxic sometimes. So I think that in the next years, if we do pursue our dreams, kind of like you only live once, but not in a way to do, whatever, but in a way to like make it count kind of thing. Um, and just redefining what we're known as by our actions. I think that you could say all you want, oh, we're different, we're this, but it's what you actually do, and it's what you do with what you have that matters.
Yeah, I just like your idea. Like, just we only live once, so we have to try many challenges, many opportunities to do everything. Okay, so yeah. And another question is like, so what advice would you give to some young students, the youngster that they want to start doing the project, the community initiative, but they don't know how to begin at the first time? So what advice would you give to them to overcome that difficulty?
So I definitely understand where the person would be coming from when it comes to it being tough to start. You can't necessarily just wake up and say, "Oh, it's done, I did it." But you can wake up and say, "Oh, today I'm gonna try, I'm gonna start, and I'm gonna do it." It's often the hardest to take the first step, but that's the one that's the most important because it can lead you in the directions that you're going. But it's also important to remember that you can like change your paths throughout it all. And what's important is that you do start, because when you start, you learn things along the way. Every mistake or even challenge is an opportunity to grow and to learn. When it comes to determining what path you want to go down, you can definitely do journaling, even just write down some jot notes of kind of what area you want to go to or what you're wanting to achieve. For me, for example, it's inspiring others and giving others a place to speak when they can't speak for themselves, kind of thing. Um, so yeah, just determining what kind of direction you want to go into and who you want to help. Hopefully, it's not going to be helping just yourself, because that's kind of like a little too shallow for a project to go far. It should be helping somebody else, in my opinion. But yeah, just write down your dreams and try to make best with what you have.
Yeah, That's a positive perspective. Okay, so Lily, are you ready to ask your question?
Yeah, sorry for late. So yeah, so I really want to ask you like how do you envision the next year, 5 or 10 years for young people who choose to break the pattern and redefine what you can look like?
I think that I see the next years being kind of all about us. I think that it's time for us to step up and make the changes that generations before us haven't. I think that it would look like everybody having kind of like their own personality and putting that forward and not to be in like the same cookie cutter personality where everyone's the same because I think our generation is far better than that and that we have more potential. So I see us living up to our potential once we truly realize that this is kind of like this is our shot, so we have to make the best out of it, and that like there's no better time than the present. That's the advice that I would give and how I see everything going if people take that advice.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so I have an extra question like during your process of doing test speaker, was there a moment behind the scenes when you doubted your message or strengthened it?
Yeah, I think that 100%. Sometimes I would be wondering if, like, I was good enough and if I got these messages across well enough. And that was kind of anxious, especially when I started really young going into this process. I definitely should have cut myself some slack in a way because if I messed up like one word, I would really just overthink it for like 3 days. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? But it was only when I started to realize that worrying is like worshiping the problem and that it was more important to like move forward instead of just be stuck on one thing that I really was able to grow. I think it's really easy to be hard on yourself, but it's that courage that needs to be inside of you, and you need to take that courage to move forward and to kind of like not be afraid to be seen, whether it's you making mistakes or not. And like you said about the message, it all really comes down to what you're trying to achieve. I think that everyone should just be kind of like speaking what they know and not trying to be a fake because I think, especially this generation, that can be very transparent and people would be able to know that you're faking it kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really impressive. So, um, what is one thing about preparing for a TED Talk that most people would never expect?
I would say that one thing preparing for TED Talk or any speech actually, at least my kind of like perspective on it is how the practicing process isn't as hard as it seems, but it's a little bit silly. It takes a lot of practice to be able to just repeat the same thing over and over and over until you get it perfect. I know that I would always laugh at myself when I would be in the mirror trying to say something perfectly, and I'm like, this is so silly. But sometimes putting yourself in those silly, uncomfortable positions is what's going to make you stand out and what's going to make you 100% have those facial reactions that you want to have when you're speaking. So I think that would be something that might surprise some people.
That's just amazing. Yeah, this is the end of our talk show today, and I'm so grateful for your having time with us today. Your idea, your story, your insight have truly added something special into the episode today. Thank you so much, and I'm so grateful for your opportunity. Yeah. So, do you have the final message to talk to our audiences?
Yeah, so to your audience, hopefully you're listening. I'd like to say that I hope that going into this new year right now, 2026, you do chase your dreams, whether that means writing them on a paper or starting a passion project. I think that even small steps are important when they're consistent and all kind of like contributing to the overall bettering of yourself and your experience, and take every opportunity that comes your way because you never know what's going to happen and you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I will.